عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Hope everyone's having a Ramadan Mubarak, especially in these last 10 nights. We know how blessed these last 10 nights are. I implore you guys, to increase in dhikr, increase in worship, to take advantage of the blessings of these 10 nights, inshallah. As for today's video, we're going to be looking at this small clip from this video made by Trinitarians trying to prove that Jesus is God and trying to prove the Trinity in the New Testament according to the statements of Jesus, right? So I want you guys just to take a quick look at this clip here and then we'll talk about it after.
Luke 8, verses 38 through 39. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your own house, and tell what great things God has done for you." And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. This is obvious. What Jesus has done equals what God has done. So here again we have Jesus is God in the gospel.
So, as you guys saw here, the passage quoted by the Trinitarian here is Luke 8, right? Where Jesus, he heals a demon-possessed man, and he goes and tells him after to tell what great things God has done for you. And the man goes around to tell people what great things Jesus has done for him, right? And the Trinitarian claim here is that because what God has done, if you notice the footnote at the bottom, what God has done is the same as what Jesus has done. Somehow this means Jesus is God according to the gospel, right? Do you guys understand how absurd this assumption is? How absurd this assertion is, right? It's ignoring basic biblical concepts. It's ignoring basic functionality of prophets and messengers and agents of God throughout the Bible, right? I mean, just to clarify, let's look at this more. Let's look at this passage in the book of Acts, right? Let's look at this passage in the book of Acts to illustrate my point, right? What is Acts? And mind you, Acts, the same person speaking in Luke 8, right? So let's look at this passage from Acts here. What does it say? Fellow Israelites, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourselves know. This is basic relation between a prophet or a messenger and God, right? God does miracles, God does wonders, God does signs through the prophets, through the agents, right? And that's exactly what it's saying here in Acts 2:22, that God did miracles through Christ. It would be absurd to ignore this basic fact and to try and equivocate Jesus and God because they're doing the same action. In fact, I want you guys to look at this passage from Exodus 7, and let's read it together, and let's see what happens if we apply the same logic, right? Yeah, I'll have Exodus 7 open on the screen for you guys to see. Exodus 7:17. What does it say? This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the rivers will stink, and the Egyptians will not be able to drink its water. Verse 19. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone. Verse 20. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. He, Aaron, raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials and struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed into blood. Notice, I want you guys to focus here. What does verse 17 say? It says, by this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile. And then we go to verse 20. Aaron is the one with the staff in his hand. Aaron is the one striking the water of the Nile and changing the water into blood. If the Trinitarians were truly consistent here with the logic that they're giving in this Luke passage, they would now say that Aaron is God, that Aaron is now somehow divine. that we should just completely ignore the fact that we know prophets and messengers and representatives and agents of God always do these things on behalf of God. God does miracles through them, right? Take another example, right? Go to Exodus 14, right? What does Exodus 14 say? It says that Moses was commanded by God, to put his staff over the water and then to divide the sea. And then just a few verses later, it says that God is the one that divided the sea. Are we going to equivocate the two again? No, that will be ridiculous. It will be ridiculous, right? I mean, again, I'll remind you of what it says in Acts. God did miracles, right, among Christ, right? Sorry, God did miracles among you through Christ, right? It's very clear. If the Trinitarians were truly consistent, again, they'll just have all these other prophets suddenly become God, you know? And, one important thing that has to be mentioned is, what is the Christian claim? What does the church claim about Paul and Luke? They claim that Luke is a companion of Paul, that Luke is a student and disciple of Paul. And if we're really to take the Trinitarian claim that Paul so explicitly taught the Trinity, and that Paul so explicitly taught that Jesus was God incarnate, God the Son, why don't we see the same pattern in Luke? Where are all these explicit passages in Luke? Where is the divine claims of Christ in Luke? Where is even the allusions to that Christ is God or divine in Luke? We find none of it. If this is the best that the Trinitarians can bring, Luke 8, then I'm sorry, but the Trinity is not there. It's funny, by the way, I just want to point out, guys, throughout this whole video, the only passage from Luke that they bring is this, right? This is the only thing that they can bring. It's ridiculous. Just to further illustrate the point, let's take a real life example. Take let's say Donald Trump, for example, right? If I say Donald Trump attacked China, and then Donald Trump goes on to send his military and his army to attack China instead, right? Does this mean suddenly that Donald Trump is the military? That Donald Trump is the army? Or vice versa, that the army is Donald Trump? No, of course not. It's simple agency, right? The agent of Donald Trump, which is the US military, or the representative of Donald Trump, which is the US military, attacks China on his behalf. The same thing is with God, right? God does miracles through his prophets. God does miracles through his messengers. As I just showed in Acts, right? God did miracles, among the people through Christ, It's really just desperation at this point on behalf of the Trinitarians to just show their doctrine that's just simply not there. But yeah, I mean, that's all I wanted to point out for this video. Inshallah, we'll be going to more of these Trinitarian claims in later videos. But yeah, that's what I wanted to point out for today. Inshallah, everyone has a good Ramadan, last night of Ramadan. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.